What's going on, everybody? Khalipa's Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a quick comparison between the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G and the OnePlus Nord N200 5G. Now, before we go any further, as always, I do want to remind you to hit that subscribe button, and if you want to learn more about either of these phones individually, I will be linking to several other videos about them in the description, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. So if you're interested, definitely check that out, but otherwise, let's get started. So with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, we're getting a 6.6-inch 120Hz PLS LCD display with a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 400, an aspect ratio of 20:9, and an 82.5% screen-to-body ratio. With the OnePlus Nord N200 5G, we're getting a 6.49-inch IPS LCD display with a 90Hz refresh rate, a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 405, an aspect ratio of 20:9, and an 83.7% screen-to-body ratio. So in general, these displays are honestly really similar. They have similar display technology. Both of them do have pretty high refresh rates, although keep in mind, the A23 5G with a 120Hz refresh rate versus 90Hz is still a little bit higher, so the movement on the screen is going to be a little bit faster and smoother, but honestly, that difference is really subtle, and you're probably not even going to notice it. Other than that, they both do have really nice looking 1080p resolutions, which is going to make them great for consuming content. Really, the only difference here is that with the A23 5G, as you can clearly see, this phone is a little bit larger, not really by a whole lot, but it's definitely still noticeable. So if you do want a slightly larger display, the A23 5G will have a bit of an advantage, but honestly otherwise, if you want a really nice display, you won't go wrong with either phone. Now when it comes to storage, both phones are getting 64GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, so not exactly the best in my opinion. I feel like in this day and age, with stuff like apps, the system, and just files in general getting larger and larger as time goes on, I feel like 128GB is a lot more ideal, but that being said, for relatively entry-level phones, for the average user, 64GB will be at least acceptable. And again, both phones do have microSD card expansion too, so if you want to offload stuff like music, photos and videos, stuff like that, you do have that option. Now for security features, both phones have face unlock, and they both have fingerprint scanners right here on the power keys. Definitely a great spot for a fingerprint scanner. But starting with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, let's go ahead and give them a try. There we go, one more time. And there we go. Moving on to the OnePlus Nord N200 5G. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see, they were both real fast and responsive, no issues at all. And again, remember, both phones also have face unlock as well, so if you want to use that instead, you always can. Now taking a look at the camera setups here, with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, we got a water drop notch for the front-facing camera, not the best looking, but also really common for phones in this price range. This camera is 8 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a full quad camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra-wide camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. So again, we got pretty much all the features here, can't really complain. And for video, this phone has a max recording quality of 1080p in both the rear and front cameras, so pretty standard as well. With the OnePlus Nord N200 5G, we got a hole punch design for the front-facing camera. This one looks a lot better in my opinion, and this camera is 16 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a triple camera setup with a 13 megapixel main camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. And for video, same kind of thing. The OnePlus Nord N200 5G also has a max recording quality of 1080p in both the rear and front cameras, so no 4K with this phone either. So in general, both phones do have pretty good camera setups, but I would say in a couple different ways, the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G does have a significant advantage. First of all, when it comes to features, this phone does have an ultra-wide camera, whereas with the OnePlus Nord N200 5G, again, there's no ultra-wide camera, so if you want to get those wider angle shots, then of course, the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G will have an advantage. In addition to this, I do think the photo quality with the A23 5G is significantly better. On one hand, the OnePlus Nord N200 5G isn't really bad, so if you just need a couple nice photos here and there, maybe for social media for example, it will at least get the job done. But if you are taking a decent amount of photos, you want a wider variety of features, and you just want the best photo quality between the two phones, the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G will still have a significant advantage. Now when it comes to RAM and processor, with the A23 5G we're getting 4GB of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 695 5G processor. With the OnePlus Nord N200 5G, this phone is getting 4GB of RAM as well with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 480 5G. Now I ran Geekbench 5 benchmark tests on both of them, and here are the scores right here. As you can see here, the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G does have a bit of an advantage, and I would say in general, when you're actually using the phones, this is pretty accurate. On one hand, the OnePlus Nord N200 5G is not a slow phone by any means, and if you're just doing basic activities like web browsing, social media, streaming content like videos and music and stuff like that, the N200 5G is going to be perfectly fine for you. But that being said, if you want the faster phone between the two, maybe you're doing stuff like mobile gaming, or you're just going to be on your phone a bit more, keep in mind that although again, the OnePlus Nord N200 5G is not bad, you will get a better experience overall with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G. Now for the batteries, both phones have 5000 mAh batteries, with the Samsung Galaxy Galaxy A23 5G supporting 25 watt fast charging, and the OnePlus Nord N200 5G supporting 18. Now, honestly, when it comes to this, I feel like you're really not going to see a huge difference in the charging speed. Obviously, if you want the best fast charging, then you might want to go with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, but honestly, in general, I feel like for 99% of people, you're really not even going to see a difference. That being said, when it comes to the battery life, since again, both phones do have 5,000 mAh batteries, you can expect to get great battery life and longevity here. So overall, if you're looking for a phone with a really good battery, then either phone will be a great choice. Now, when it comes to the software, both phones currently have Android 12, but if having the latest software is important to you, I would definitely say the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G is going to be a better choice here, because first of all, it is a newer phone, and second of all, Samsung does have better software support than OnePlus. Another thing to keep in mind here is that both phones do have NFC, so if you like to use tap and pay, you'll be happy to know you can do that with either of them. But in conclusion, which of these phones is better? In general, I would say in pretty much every way, the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G is a better phone. The displays are really close, but having a higher refresh rate and a slightly larger size, the A23 5G still does have a tiny advantage here, although to be fair, for the display you're still really not going to go wrong with the OnePlus. The storage again is pretty much the same, but for the camera setup, the A23 5G really does have a huge advantage with not only an ultra-wide camera, but also just better photo quality in general. So if you're taking a lot of photos, while the OnePlus Nord N200 5G again isn't really going to be terrible, the A23 5G is just going to be a lot better. When it comes to performance, again, while the OnePlus is not a slow phone, the A23 5G is still noticeably faster, so if you're going to be on your phone a lot, you will get a slightly better experience here. And again, being a Samsung, the A23 5G is going to get a lot more major updates. That being said though, the OnePlus Nord N200 5G again is not a bad phone, and considering this phone is about a year old by now, you might be able to find some really good deals on it. So in that case, if you can get the OnePlus Nord N200 5G for significantly less than the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, then it still might be worth considering. In addition to this, even though the A23 5G again does have better specs, features, and performance, I feel like the design on the OnePlus Nord N200 5G feels a lot more premium, and honestly it just looks a bit nicer. So if that does matter to you, which I don't think it will to that many people, but if it does, then definitely keep in mind the OnePlus Nord N200 5G, despite not being quite as good on paper, does feel a bit nicer. But in general, despite their differences, I do think both phones are great entry-level 5G devices that do provide quite a bit of value for the money. But this concludes my comparison between the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G and the OnePlus Nord N200 5G. Again, if you want to learn more about either of these phones individually, I will be linking to several other videos about them in the description, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalipis Tech on Twitter and Instagram, and as always, I will see you in the next video.